with this battle or conflict, or whatever you want to call it, war, whatever it is going on, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. This is a big deal. Now, why is it so big? Well, we have everyone complaining about it, especially people like China, Qatar, and even Saudi Arabia. Now, what takes place coming and going to the Strait of Hormuz? All those Gulf places, those Gulf states, all those areas that people vacation in Dubai, UAE, all these places are warning people. Shortages, stockpile. Why? Now, we need to take this and learn from it, because Donald Trump said one thing. Someone asked, is there a risk on American people, on American soil? Wait till you hear what he says. So when you think about that, and you think about the dangers, the conflicts, the unrest that we have going on, then it's, again, saying, why in the world would you not want to have some supplies and needs that you can put up? We're going to discuss that all today. Also, we're going to discuss what our government was doing against us. It's amazing how we saw back, and all this stuff is getting unclassified. Robert Malone and RFK is exposing the Lyme disease thing. Once you start looking at all this, you start realizing, okay, the more that we saw all this reclassification or this unclassified documents fields from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, this has been so many years ago, look at the technology they were doing to use against Americans. What now could they be using against Americans? It's kind of unbelievable. So we're going to discuss that. And then lastly, we're going to discuss how it's amazing how all these people tell you that we're bought off by Christianity and conservatism and Israel. But when you go out and look, it's actually the Muslim countries that are buying off politicians. Laura Loomer just exposed Thomas Massey. Bannon. Some of these people who are now the woke right is actually paid for by the same people that Tucker's cozying up with. Isn't it amazing how when someone pays us money, these big influencers get all this money, they may change their tune and actually start talking about the opposite side. Why? Well, where's the money at? It's kind of like politicians. Everybody is bought off with money. It's so sad to me. Let's dive into these stories today. Hey guys, welcome to our channel. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new, please go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell, give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that's okay. But let us know what you think about the content of today's video. If you hype or like, it does help us spread our message across this platform. And again, there's about 30 to 40% of people that are watching that are not subscribed. We humbly ask that you subscribe to our channel. We're here each and every day, and it would mean the world to us. Now, let's jump into the stories of the day. First, let's talk about this stockpile or the shortage news that's breaking out. Now, I do want us to understand, when we hear news, there's two ways news is given to us and personified. It's either true or it's false. It's pretty innovative, huh, Colby? Yeah, it is. No, here's what I'm saying. Some things are used as propaganda, and they're used to make us do things. Some things are not. And then we have common sense to say, okay, what is actually truth and what's not? And if we don't, then why don't we at least prepare for one or the other, depending on what cautious either optimism or pessimism is. As a realist, I believe that things are not going to get better for a long time just because of the way the world is going and because of the way our politicians are and the way our debt is and so forth. Let's just go over a few of these stories, and I want you to just learn and say, okay, what can I take from these stories to make sure that I am ready because of what Trump just said about American soil? First, let's read the news, and then we're going to talk about what he just stated. Gulf countries may run out of fresh food in stockpiles in just days. Now, Gulf countries, these are the ones that we consider like UAE, Qatar, all the ones that deal with the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Dubai was one of these. So anyways, let's keep on going. It says, the war with Iran is choking supply chains. 18% of global air cargo is already grounded and sea routes are crumbling very fast. This is many Gulf countries import almost everything, such as fresh fruits, vegetables, and other perishables, and they're starting to vanish. He says, actually, time is running out. Let's keep on going. It says, Chevron warns that there is going to be oil problems and there could be some shortages coming linked to this. Not because we're in need of it in America, because they're going to use it to cause problems, especially in the chaos in these leftist states. This is from a Chevron executive out of California. It says, the California crackdown on the state's oil, and along with using the propaganda and the news that's coming around it, will destroy and collapse the state's oil industry. A source coming out of Russia, it says Dubai is running out of food. Fresh food supplies in Dubai will last only just about 10 days, according to the head of logistics giant in that area. It says the war with Iran is seriously disrupting supply chains, and it looks to be something that will not get done quickly. It says China is all of a sudden pushing and pressing and trying to make negotiations so they can get oil, gas, and other needs through the Strait of Hormuz. It says without it, China's economy will struggle. I want you to listen to what this billionaire David Friedberg said. Friedberg is, I watch him all the time. He's considered, quote unquote, the Sultan of Science on All In Pod. But he's also an innovative seed grower. Again, not that I'm agreeing to GMO crops and some of the beliefs he has, but I do think he is very wise when he says things, because I tend to listen because he's a brilliant guy. Listen to this. It says, Maduro and Iran was just chess moves in Trump's grand bargain with China. It says 90% of all the oil comes out of Iran goes to China, and it's been a long developing relationship with Maduro's government with China. China will not make it and cannot be the global power that it wants to be against America without Iran or Venezuela or some sort of oil coming in. Now, they still get some from Russia, of course, but they're not getting the quality that they were getting from Venezuela and from the Gulf, or from the area of Iran. It says that China has actually stopped exporting what they were exporting, was petroleum, oil, gas, diesel, all that. They can't do it anymore because they're trying to hold stockpile right now. This is from Qatar's energy minister. It says this will bring down the global economy. It says we're in a dire warning because of the chokehold in the Strait of Hormuz. It says Brent crude futures are on track for the biggest week gain ever. It says even down to the days of 2020 lockdowns. It says this move is exceeding 20% of weekly spikes compared to what we saw with the Russia-Ukraine war. This operation will cause a bigger chaos than 2008, than 2020, than anything we've ever seen. It will crash the global economy. Now, I don't believe any of that as in truth, saying that the world economy is falling to pieces because of this event. I think our world economy is falling to pieces because of all the other things that we're doing, along with the fact that we're all living on falsified money. Mostly every country, other than a lot of these oil-rich countries, are living on borrowed money, and on borrowed money from each other on borrowed terms. Everything is just a false money. So I believe the economies of the global structure is definitely crumbling, but I don't believe this war is doing. I believe this is just another link in the chain that's starting to break, to where they're saying, okay, well, this one little hiccup could cause for it to all crash down. That is a possibility. It says that what we don't realize, most of the world needs goods because they can't do it without global economies helping. Now that's scary in a facet to me, because I'm thinking, okay, if I want to be sustainable, and I want America sustainable, or I want, whatever country I live in sustainable, then we have to do things for ourselves. That's why when Trump is securing this oil with Venezuela, securing more gold, the U.S. just bought a ton of gold and stockpiling gold. Also, the U.S. is exporting more fuel than it's ever exported, meaning we have enough and we're sufficient. Also, our food system, we're, again, having more food grown here than any other country. See, what you don't realize is when everybody's dogging Trump out with the propaganda side and the woke right, we actually are in a better footing than we've ever been when it comes to the goods that we have. Now, here's the key. Should we fix our money problem and the fact that our Congress is blowing money that they shouldn't be blowing? Absolutely. I didn't say everything's perfect and cupcakes and rainbows. I don't believe the fault is at Trump really as much as it is Congress. But I digress. When you're hearing these comments, how should we take this and understand what's best for us? China bought more gold this week. China bought more silver this week because they realized silver is needed for weaponry defense and also for solar panels and other goods. All these battles are tied to really the dominating of world powers, America versus China. Iran and Venezuela are just cards. So is Greenland. This is all a bigger play for who is going to control the global economy. This is a strain on China because we are stopping what they need the most of, which is oil and gas. Now, we're going to talk about all this and how it pertains to you. But before we do, a word from today's sponsor, and then we're going to jump right into why we should stockpile, because what Trump said, an announcement he made that's actually shocking and makes us, again, I try not to go to big cities, try not to do a lot of these crazy things, but wait till you see what he said. We talk a lot on this channel about paying attention, about being prepared. about not just thinking everything will work itself out. Well, that got me thinking, something that people don't think about enough is maybe their retirement. I logged into my accounts, my IRAs. Hey, the balances are up. On paper, everything looks fine. And then I start thinking, well, if everything is fine, why in the world am I overpaying for groceries, for gas, for fuel, for any and everything, insurances? Everything is up. So then I started thinking, actually, the system that I'm in, is it really benefiting me? Am I really making enough money for retirement to cover the expenses that I'm feeling? So then I asked myself, am I just trusting a system, or do I need to think past the system? So then I started thinking, am I actually protected, or am I just trusting in a system that may leave me down? I mean, this is my life savings. It's everything I work for. This is what I'm hoping to have when retirement comes. So then I started looking into, what else can we put our money in? This was a journey for me, trying to make sure that I can invest in something that is real, tangible, something that will last. And that's where I come to Augusta Precious Metals. Physical gold and physical silver, it's where it's at. And now you can utilize it in an IRA. There's no loophole, there's no fringe thing. It's literally in our tax code to where you can literally hold physical gold and silver in your IRA. So it caught my attention. Now I love holding physical gold and silver, but what about some of the money that I have in those retirement accounts that I'm worried about? Now I can maneuver it into physical gold and silver. And that's when I started doing actually some digging. That's why I come across this company called Augusta Precious Metals. They have thousands of reviews and also has an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. Let Augusta Precious Metals help you do what it's helping me do. Understand gold and silver and how it can benefit you in a plan, hopefully help your retirement and give you a peace of mind as you sleep every night. They focus on education. They want to make sure it's a right fit for you. Make sure this gold IRA is perfect for your situation and your retirement. They honestly made me change my perspective on retirement. Not out of fear, not out of scaredness, but out of making sure I could proactively protect my money. And gold is the answer. As you're being prepared, as you want to sleep better at night, knowing that you have some safety there, go to maxlovesgold.com or text the number below. They can help you, they can walk you through to set up a gold IRA specifically to suit your needs. Trust me, you'll get the information you need. No nonsense, no sales gimmicks, but just truth and education to say this is a right move or a wrong move. But I promise you, it's worth the conversation. Being prepared is not extreme. It's sensible and it's common sense. Check with Augusta Precious Metals today, maxlovesgold.com, or text the number below. I want to read what Trump stated, and this is going along. The two biggest billionaires tied to Google both moved to Florida. So did Mark Zuckerberg, and a lot of them are buying in what they call the billionaire's bunker. They're buying in areas that are very, very secluded. A lot of these people are trying to get to very conservative areas. For instance, a lot of them are moving to Texas. There was major billionaires moving to Texas. People are getting away from these cities. Why? Because they know something bad is taking place. Now, you remember me talking about the fact of course, California having a major oil problem. Of course, the criminal problems all throughout the cities, and the Democrats would rather see their cities fall than give Trump credit. Now, I want you to listen to what Trump said about, someone asked him, how will this Iranian war affect us? We hear about the stockpile problems, and we hear about the shortage problems over there. We hear about the dangers of people living in Dubai or UAE or Qatar, and all these bombs are just flying everywhere. How should we pertain, and what should we be doing as Americans? I want you to listen to what he said, because it's kind of eye-opening, and it makes me say this is why we stockpile. This is why we prep. This is why we want to be sustainable. Listen to this. Trump on potential attacks on American soil. He quotes, he says, some people may die. Actually, he said some people will die. He said, Time magazine asked Trump if Americans should worry about retaliatory strikes at home. I guess, but I think we're already worried, and we've always been worried all the time, especially in the cities. We plan for it. But yeah, we expect some things. Like I said, some people will die. When you go to war, some people will die. Now, do I believe that we're going to see Iran bring a ship over here or something like that? No, that's not what I'm saying here. What I think he's saying, and I could be completely wrong, but just like the Austin situation where you had this person with Iranian garb on coming out to cause a problem, just like the guy that they were trying to personify as this, this Marine veteran that was, wanting to fight for his country, not other countries, during the committee meeting the other day with Tim Sheehy. That guy he's wearing, again, Palestinian garbs in most pictures. He says he's having problems with mental illness. His wife is of Arab descent, that's a Muslim. So when you see that, That is the attacks I think we're going to have here in America, on American soil. I believe you're going to see these Lone Rangers or these people that have been let in over the border, or we've allowed to be, just to get radicalized based on internet and allowed them to just do whatever they want to do in America. That's the risk we have in America. Now let's take that and say, how can we make sure that we're prepared? Now, there was a citywide curfew not too long ago in Minneapolis, Minnesota, because of the situation with ICE. If you remember all that going down, they've pulled some of that back now. Of course, Christy Nolan was fired, and all that. We won't hash that out again, but there was curfew set. Now, in my town, in my little small town that has hardly no major homicides, not like that. We're in a very small town. There was a situation where we had a lot of violence coming up from New Orleans, that we were kind of like, we're on a go-between between New Orleans and Jackson in an interstate. So they were saying some of these places were becoming hotbeds of people trafficking, things that they shouldn't be trafficking. So for a second, we were in that same boat where they had about a 2-week period where they were saying, look, if you're school age, or if you're a young adult, or if you're older, you need to make sure you're inside in certain times. They gave curfews. Now, they didn't enforce it to a point where it was damaging, but they would pull you over if they saw you going out in these times. All right. If you go to New Orleans, we used to love going to New Orleans when we were younger, me and my wife, right when we got married, and even when we were dating, because it was only about 2 or 3 hours from us, and we could make a day trip, enjoy French Quarters, eat at Cafe Du Monde. Well, anyways, even then, we were like, there were certain areas you didn't go, and then there were certain areas you didn't go, especially when dark started coming. You kind of got away from the Riverwalk, the French Quarter, because of some of the dangers there around Jackson Square and all. But now, you can't go anywhere without being in danger in some of those places. All cities are like this. Now, here's the biggest hiccup. These democratic cities have already said they will not support President Trump. They will not help ICE. They will not deport people. They also have said that they would stand against this Iranian situation. Now, it blows my mind that a lot of them are doing that, because these are the same people that promoted and wanted Obama, hitting Gaddafi and going to Libya and Syria and all these places. But I digress. The thing I want to pay attention to is this. If one thing pops off in this city, or in this town, or in this area, how safe are you? It says that people are panicking in some of these Gulf states and these regions because of these attacks that are starting to happen to them, to where people were unprepared, they don't have medicine, they don't have food, and they're worried that they're not going to be able to fill up their cars full of gas. Now, that sounds so dumb sometimes and foolish, because we're like, Colby, we live in America. Everything's perfect. We're doing great. Yeah, but we're just one spark, especially in these cities, away from something like that taking place. We have to make sure that we are very, very conscientious of this. Why do you think all these billionaires are building bunkers and buying these yachts? There was 2 more monster mega yachts parked in Miami from billionaires getting away from some of these cities, moving in that region. Why do you think they're moving to Texas outside of these big cities? Why do you think everybody is trying to get away from these areas? Because they know something is coming. I want to read something to you. And this is where, again, this is not dealing with the war, but this is dealing with exactly what we're talking about. Now, Antibiotics been in the news for a long time, dealing with this, supply chain issue with Department of Defense. It's going to be a big blow up when it comes down to it with this AI CEO. Why don't you listen to what Anthropic CEO said, Dario? And again, he doesn't like Trump. He doesn't like this Department of Defense, like with Pete Hegseth. We know all that. But why don't you listen to what he said? He said, we don't actually know how conscious our AI is, and how much it knows and how much it doesn't know. I don't know what it's going to do, and how, once we've built it, its capabilities and what it can possibly do for us or against us throughout the world in the coming days, weeks, and months ahead. This CEO is also the same CEO that says that most AI technology will take over about 50% of jobs within a very short window of time. It says that already AI is evaluating that it's taken up 20% of jobs by the end of this year, and could possibly take up 50% and wipe out all white-collar jobs, all jobs that are done with technology, within 2 to 5 years. Now, if you remember, people went crazy over toilet paper and over milk and bread and all this stuff when a hurricane comes, but really more than that, 2020. Think back to 2020. Do you remember how everybody was going crazy? And so everything was getting taken off the shelves. Panic buying started taking. You know what the biggest problem with that? They said that unemployment, remember, got to like 5, then it got to 10%, and then it kind of climbed up a little bit more to like 12%. You have someone who is aggressively saying by the end of this year, 20 to 50% of jobs could be taken by AI. Now, you saw Jack Dorsey with Square, you saw Amazon, you saw a lot of these big companies already firing a lot of people. Mass layoffs. So when we talk about the dangers of what's going on with this war, then compound it with the fact that our dollar is struggling, then compound it with the fact that our oil and gas will probably creep up, then talk about it and compound it with the fact that these cities will not support the president, then add AI to it, we're in for a heap of trouble by the end of 2026. There's an AI tech billionaire that owns a company that he just got out of Silicon Valley. And he said this, I want you to listen. He said the people of the world, but he said especially America, because we've been so comforted and so comfortable for so long, AI will hurt way more and will cause more damage to the American prosperity and peace and freedom than you can even imagine. He said, now you will have more time on your hands, but that doesn't mean you will control the freedoms that you have. He also said, what you don't realize is we have done this to our own self because we've not learned how to be skillful, we've not learned how to do things on our own, and we've lived with pure convenience. And so then when all of a sudden we see these unrest take place, these problems with AI, these developments of technology, these mass layoffs, these wars, these rumors of wars, these attacks, he said America will fall harder and have more problems with it. Not because we don't have enough, we have too much. And he said people have been comforted so long that they will lose their minds and have more utter panic than most places across the world. I believe that. There's been pushes on Twitter for you hear these people like, we need to fire all these Republicans. We need to get rid of them all. We need a revolution. We need a Tea Party. We need to do all this over again, start over, reset. That all sounds like that could be a winning choice, especially if you're a libertarian or freedom-minded individual. But less than 5% of Americans are farmers. Less than 10% of Americans could pay for something without a paycheck over 3 to 6 months. That means 90% of individuals are living paycheck to paycheck or living at least tight or living on credit cards. They said that 50% of Americans could not make it out of a month and they would be in debt or they would be bankrupt with not being able to pay for their house or their car if they lost their job within 2 to 4 weeks. So within a month's time, 50% of Americans could possibly be in the streets protesting and rioting because they have nothing and they've lost everything. We're that close. And so let this be a warning what we're seeing with this Iran situation, because China is already starting having these problems. What if all of a sudden that stuff comes here? What if all of a sudden these AI tech billionaires are telling the truth, and that's why they're building all these bunkers and stockpiling everything, because they see the writing on the wall. They're the ones who made it, and all of a sudden now it's like, well, what's your thoughts on it? Now, 2 more stories and we're ending up. First, let's go to what Laura Loomer just stated about Congress. Again, this is why I talk about these Congress and these problems all the time, because you hear all these people talk about how they want to expose all these files, and then all of a sudden they hide their own files. Like AOC literally voted against exposing the slush fund for all these harassment claims through Congress. All these people did the same thing. So they lie to you all the time. But another lie, again, I like Thomas Massey. I like Tucker Carlson. There's things that they do say that does make sense. But then when you start actually looking at these woke right ideologies and how they're pushing against conservatism and Trump and against Israel, this might be why. Listen to this. This is Laura Loomer. It says, for 2 years now, I've been telling everyone that these influencers who are being paid are actually not paid by conservative money or AIPAC money or anything like that. They've been paid by Islamic countries with Islamic money. It says, I've always heard the claim that everybody that's pro-Israel has been paid $7,000. That's exactly so funny, because now it's being exposed that actually the pro-Muslim movements is paying these people $7,000. Listen to this. It says FEC records reveal that Representative Thomas Massey, who has been spreading all these lies about pro-Israel accounts being paid, has actually been receiving donations, $7,000 from Muslim donors. It says this explains why Massey appears to be pro-Iran and why he wants the limited president powers in not carrying out these strikes on Iran. It says another purveyor of this is like Trita Parsi, the founder of NIAC. It says that this founder is of the Quincy Institute, who keeps appearing on the Bannon's War Room, who has ties to Steve Bannon, who's also pushing against all this. It says this is the same council that has been accused of lobbying for the Iranian regime in being a mouthpiece for the Ayatollah in D.C. This same group was just investigated by the DOJ and also Ted Cruz, Tom Cotton, and a few more representatives because they realized this is a group that's actually causing problems in America. It says this is the same group that also just awarded Thomas Massie the award from last week from the Quincy Institute. This is a group that supports the Ayatollah and the Iranian regime, along with supporting some of the biggest woke right ideology in America. They have receipts showing where Thomas Massie ties to Steve Bannon, also Marjorie Taylor Greene. So who's actually getting paid and funneled money to? But now nobody's going to do anything about this, because see, here's what happens. Mike Johnson's not going to investigate it. Nothing's going to happen. You know why? Because if you really said, I'm going to open all this up and see who's paying all our Congress and Senate, what you're going to realize is none of them are representing you. They're representing all the special interests. They're representing all these other countries. Lindsey Graham may be representing someone totally different. Tom Cotton, same way, or Marjorie Taylor Greene or Thomas Massie. They're all bought off. That's why they're all filthy rich, people. That's why they're all filthy rich. So what Laura Loomer is exposing this is what I said yesterday, and I got so much blowback on Twitter for it, but think about it. I don't want to not have Republicans in leadership. I just want to have better Republicans in leadership. So what does that mean? Primaries. How many times have you voted in primaries? How many times have you heard about it? Mississippi has a primary next week, and yet you've heard hardly nothing about the people going against the senators or the congressmen. Because we just say, well, they have an R behind their name, we're just going to let them stay there. And that's how they get comfortable, and that's how they take advantage of the American people. I think of Cornyn, I think of Lindsey Graham, I think of Roger Wicker in Mississippi. I think of all these people that's been in this leadership position, and yet nothing is getting done. Kentucky, what are you doing? You have McConnell. Thune, what are we doing? We have these people in leadership. Why? And then we wonder if we exposed all this. I'm glad that we're exposing Thomas Massie or Marjorie Taylor Greene, but if we exposed all the other ones, you'd probably realize that every country is paying all these people all the time to ultimately not support America First initiatives. That's what's heartbreaking. And that brings me to the last point. There's a new study that came out, of course, on Lyme's disease that RFK, along with Robert Malone, along with declassifications of a lot of files that have been classified for all these years, that it was used again against American people to cause problems, and that the government had something to do with it, allegedly. If they did that in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and we just funded a propaganda wing of the CIA, that's what the funding was as part of the stopgap bill that the Republicans passed last week, or last month. What more are we getting ourselves into? And what more with AI technology, with all this, how much more are we being programmed in having propaganda used against us? How much more of the sicknesses and the problems that we're having, the diseases, the Alzheimer's, the diabetes, all this stuff, when you start looking at it, you're like, maybe the reason we don't get good leaders, the reason we don't change policies, the reason we just keep doing the same things, which is deemed insanity, it may be because of this right here. Guys, I started the video of talking about truth and false, talking about propaganda versus truth, talking about what's real, what's not. What I've realized is if we just have a common sense approach, seek wisdom, look to Christ, look to just your inner being to say, maybe this is not the wisest decision. Maybe I should do some research. I think we would actually be better as a society. We wouldn't be thinking about how dangerous it is. We would just be stockpiling and getting ready. We wouldn't be worried and panic buying when everybody else is because we'd already have those things. We won't be worried about all this because we hadn't put ourselves in piles of debt and not having been prepared before. It's time to just be ready for anything because it's coming. What Donald Trump says is people will die. That's scary. That's your leader. That's our leader saying that some people will die. Well, you're thinking, well, that's not going to be me. I mean, there's billions of people in the world. What says it's going to be me? What says it's not? Do you think there's people in Austin that night thought that there'd be a Iran supporter going into that area? Probably not, huh? I want you to listen to one verse, and we're going to end it. I love Scripture. You know, again, I'm a Christian, and I believe that we see politicians try to use Scripture for their benefit, but I want you to listen to this. I thought this was good. This came across my feed this morning. It says, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen. Since what we see is temporary, but what we don't see is eternal." Now that's 2 Corinthians 4:18. And I think we could see this in this concept too. Sometimes we can't always believe what we see or hear. But if we have faith, and we have groundedness, and we have a common sense and morals and values stance, and we seek guidance and Christ and wisdom. James 1:5 says, if we seek wisdom, we'll get abundance. I think we'll be okay. But if we're reliant on politicians or governments or people to take care of us, or AI to take care of us, I think we're in for a rude awakening. Guys, give me your thoughts on today's video. We appreciate you for watching. God bless.